It was about believing that our country and her athletes could be the best in the world. I've never understood why, but this made a lot of people very uncomfortable. You'll recall that when Own the Podium was first announced, there was some hand-wringing and some tut-tutting, and people did say that it seemed to be a little un-Canadian. Here's an example.
During the Canadian Olympics, the Canadians were saying own the podium, and I put out something that said, oh, it's a bit brash to say, it's a bit un-Canadian, it's a bit too brash to say own the podium.
Ha! You know what? It's amazing when Margaret Atwood is so frank about it. She really doesn't feel comfortable with a Canada that wins and goes for the gold. But joining us now to talk about that and other parts of his speech to the Manning Center is our friend, Premier of Saskatchewan, Brad Wall. Thanks for coming in, Premier. Now, what was your thesis? I think I know what it was, because I know Saskatchewan, for a generation, thought, well, maybe we can't be a half province. Maybe we can't go for the gold. But your province is now leading the country in about 10 different measures. Was that the point you were trying to make?
It was, and it is. In fact, the NDP in our province, when we were in opposition, and when we articulated a growth agenda, when we highlighted that our growth agenda would be informed by a plan to try to grow the population by 100,000 in 10 years, the NDP said that was farcical. They said it was impossible. Some of the academic elite in Saskatchewan said the same thing. And you know, Ezra, when we made that plan and set that goal, we weren't, as I said in the speech, we weren't talking about finding Bigfoot. We were talking about a province with a lot of resources that simply would grow its population at the national average of 1% a year. It was sort of the same sentiment I was referring to, not just from Margaret Atwood, but from others who really didn't like the Own the Podium thing. And as I mentioned in the speech, I wanted to play that clip, one, so we could talk a little bit about this, and two, so that Margaret Atwood could address the Manning Conference. I'm sure that's something she's always wanted to do.
That's right. Well, you know, I mean, Saskatchewan, we've talked about this before. When Saskatchewan was born, its founders had great plans. I mean, it was, if I recall, the third most populous province when it was born. I mean, it was actually expected to be even bigger. But I think I understand, to be fair, what Margaret Atwood was trying to get at. She was saying to be successful, to be number one, sort of means that you're being mean or you're being negative towards someone else. But that's sort of a zero-sum approach to the world. Saskatchewan can do great without pulling anyone else down. Canada can do great without pulling anyone else down. Am I right?
Oh, we need Alberta to do well so that we can do well. We are pleased that Alberta has the oil sands. Because of those oil sands, we do have the third largest oil reserves on the planet, Ezra. As you know very well, you've talked about these issues for a long time, longer than I have. But it's obviously good for the province when our neighbors are doing very, very well. And I hope Albertans would say the same thing. In Saskatchewan, we used to buy luggage as a present for kids that were graduating, and we don't do that anymore. We're actually keeping more of our young people. We came out with a bit of a tax break for kids who'd stay if they graduated post-secondary, and in 2007 we campaigned on it and implemented it. Over 45,000 graduates have taken us up on that. That means a couple things. One, they're paying less taxes for a while. It sunsetted until they can earn their tuition back. But two, the private sector, who deserve the credit, small businessmen and women who deserve the credit for what's going on in Saskatchewan, they're creating jobs. There's actually an option for that student to consider, notwithstanding whatever tax incentive.
And young people are making the decision that they can do as well in Saskatoon, Regina, or one of the smaller centers, than going to Calgary, Toronto. I want to ask you a question. We have Lisa Mrazek on our show every week. She's just great. I love the story she brings about Saskatchewan. It always makes me want to leave Toronto and go to Saskatchewan. But it's dawning on me that you got so much good stuff going on. You got oil from the Bakken Formation area. You got wheat. You got potash. You got uranium. You got so many things. But there's a backlog of getting it out of the province by rail because there's no pipeline. Can you speak to this? I have a theory that not making the Keystone XL pipeline is forcing all that stuff onto railways that is then causing a backlog for other products like potash or, importantly, wheat. Can you talk about how Keystone might be affecting wheat farmers?
That's actually a huge part of it, Ezra. And I want to say that the Source was one of the first national programs to focus on the issue. I saw the report Lisa filed, and then the two of you had a discussion about it afterwards. It's more than oil. Oil's a big part of it. There's more oil on the rails, and arguably there's a premium. There's a premium, by the way, in part because of a revenue cap. The government, I think in a post-Crow rate environment, a revenue cap that the government put on railway companies. The revenue cap says once you've made so much money from hauling agriculture, from grain, if you make any more than that, you'll have to pay it for agricultural research. I think it was a way to keep freight rates down for farmers. I heard Minister Ritz, the federal minister, say this week that we ought to have another look at that. Maybe not eliminate it, but at least have a look at it and modernize it, because I think there's a natural incentive then for railway companies, once they get to that cap, they've made that much money on agricultural commodities, time to reallocate those cars elsewhere and move other things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to root for the railways. I mean, we're Prairie boys. We know that's, fighting the railways is in our blood. But if there is some regulatory reason why they are choosing to go elsewhere, it's probably worth opening up. Have you had any conversations with the railway companies?
We have, our government has, absolutely. And you're right, the railway companies, they undertook a lot of layoffs, and there's a lot fewer locomotives on in the fleet right now, and there's been car reallocation. So, I'm loath to say it based on what our sort of political policy DNA is in the province of Saskatchewan, but we did say to the federal government this week, you have to look at all of the options. This is a duopoly, and so it's not really, it's a free market, but it ain't that free with two of them. And so we're going to have to canvass whatever opportunities there might be to move the grain. Japan has switched. Japan's not buying wheat from Canada.
I know. I heard that, and I thought not only is that a loss, but when you remove a big bidder from that, that hurts everything. I think we got to fix this one quick, and we got to. It's crazy that wheat is actually staying in storage instead of being sold. Last word to you, Premier. What are you hoping to achieve at the Manning Center Conference?
Well, we just wanted to provide a message that in a world where the fastest growing economies prize food security and energy security, we should be pretty hopeful in this country. We should boldly stake a claim to be energy and food superpowers. We do these things well, and we do them in a way that's more responsible than our competitors. Most of our competitors, certainly all of them on the energy side. When I think about what we do in terms of environmental sustainability, the kind of country that we offer all who'll come here in terms of basic freedoms, and so we ought to boldly stake out a claim to be leaders in this regard, and then act like it. Keep taxes low, remain competitive, tell our story, engage, myth bust with some of the technical advisors to the administration, like Daryl Hanna and Martin Sheen and Robert Redford on pipelines, and engage. And so that was the message, that this is the opportunity we have as a country, but we have to act like it, and that means a number of things.
Premier, we're out of time. Great to talk with you. Thanks for fitting us in your busy schedule today.
Thanks for your time.